On a packed Friday night, the local bar pulsed with music, laughter, and clinking glasses as people crowded in to escape the long work week. When Danielle and Dominique Carter walked inside together, their matching confidence drawing quiet attention before trouble ever found them. They ordered drinks, laughed softly, and leaned close to talk over the noise, believing this would be just another normal night out. But three off-duty police officers sitting near the back had already noticed them, eyes lingering too long, grins spreading with the kind of entitlement that came from wearing a badge, even when they weren't on duty. The men stumbled over, reeking of alcohol, voices loud and mocking. One blocked the aisle, another leaned in too close, while the third flashed his badge like it was a permission slip to behave however he pleased. They made crude comments about the sisters' bodies, questioned where they were from, and laughed when Danielle calmly asked them to step away. Dominique tried to ignore them, but hands brushed her shoulder, then her waist, and the laughter grew bolder, fueled by the belief that no one in the bar would challenge them. When Danielle stood up straight and told them firmly to leave them alone, the mood shifted instantly. Smiles hardened, voices sharpened, and what had been jokes turned into threats. One officer accused them of causing a scene, another claimed they were being aggressive, and within seconds the story flipped from harassment to disorderly women refusing to cooperate. Chairs scraped back, drinks spilled, and before anyone could process what was happening, rough hands grabbed their arms, twisting them behind their backs. Metal cuffs snapped closed, painfully tight, and the sisters were paraded through the bar as if they were criminals, while people stared at their phones or looked away, afraid to speak, afraid to be next. Outside, under harsh streetlights, the officers shoved them into a patrol car, smirking about teaching them respect. And inside the vehicle, as anger burned in their chests, Dominique forced her hands just enough to slip her badge from her pocket, letting it fall onto the pavement, where the gold emblem caught the light. "Federal Bureau of Investigation," she said clearly, expecting shock, hesitation, even fear. But instead, the men burst into laughter. One kicked it aside and told her this wasn't some big city where titles mattered. This was their town, and in their town, they decided who mattered and who didn't. At the station, the air smelled of old coffee and disinfectant as they were pushed inside, where a tall, cold-eyed police chief waited, already informed, already smirking as if this was routine. He listened to the officer's twisted version of events, then looked at the sisters like insects beneath glass, and calmly explained that complaints disappeared in this department, evidence got lost, and outsiders learned quickly not to cause problems here. He warned them that charges would pile up until they begged to leave town, just like so many before them. And when Danielle protested that what they were doing was illegal, he leaned closer, lowering his voice to promise that legality meant nothing when everyone in power was on the same side. Fear rippled through the room, but before it could settle completely, a young female officer quietly approached, later pretending to deliver paperwork while slipping Danielle a folded note with shaking fingers, whispering that this had happened many times, that people who fought back always lost, and that the department buried them one by one. And as the night dragged on, the three arresting officers returned, drunker than before, sitting near the holding cells, laughing about past arrests, bragging about planting drugs in cars, destroying families who couldn't fight back, and judges who owed them favors, not realizing every word was being secretly recorded. The sisters exchanged silent looks as the truth unfolded piece by piece, realizing this wasn't just a few bad cops, but an entire system built on abuse. When they finally managed to contact their FBI supervisor, hoping for rescue, his voice came cold and distant, telling them to drop it, to cooperate, to let it go, because some battles weren't worth fighting. And in that moment, the final betrayal settled heavy in their chests. The people meant to protect justice were protecting corruption instead, and the sisters understood fully now. They weren't just fighting for themselves. They had stumbled into something far darker, far bigger, and far more dangerous than a night of harassment in a bar. They had exposed a monster that ruled the town from the shadows, and it was already preparing to crush them. Dark parking lot, her files stolen, and her laptop smashed, while across town, the bar where hidden cameras had captured years of police brutality went up in flames, taking evidence with it. As smoke curled into the sky like a warning, the sisters were suddenly hit with new charges: arson, conspiracy, attempted murder, crimes so absurd they proved how desperate the department had become. Witnesses appeared overnight, swearing they heard the twins plotting violence, even though they had been locked behind bars the entire time, and the police chief delivered the paperwork with a smug smile, promising they would disappear into the prison system like everyone else who had dared speak out. That night, the officers dragged Danielle and Dominique from their cells under the cover of darkness, pushing them into a windowless van, claiming they were being transferred, but driving instead toward the outskirts of town, where broken roads led to an abandoned warehouse surrounded by swamp and silence, the kind of place where screams went unanswered and bodies were never found. Inside the cold concrete building, the men circled them, drunk on power, bragging about how many people they had buried, figuratively and literally, saying no one would miss two more troublemakers. When Rick pressed his gun against Danielle's head, demanding last words, something shifted. Not fear, not panic, but calm, lethal focus, as Dominique quietly worked the handcuff lock with a hairpin, and the instant it clicked free, the sisters exploded into motion. Years of training, turning chaos into precision. One officer went down with a crushed windpipe. Another hit the floor after a bone-snapping throw. The third lost his weapon and his confidence as fists and kicks struck fast and merciless until the predators were the ones bleeding on the concrete floor, shaking and helpless. The same cuffs that once bound the sisters now locked around Rick's wrists as Danielle activated a hidden camera streaming live to federal servers and the internet, broadcasting every racist rant, every confession, every boast about planted evidence and destroyed lives to thousands of viewers who kept multiplying by the second. Panic replaced arrogance as the officers realized the world was watching and their empire was burning in real time. Federal sirens wailed in the distance as agents stormed the warehouse, arresting the men mid-meltdown, while the live stream continued, capturing their collapse. Across the town, news vans flooded the streets. Crowds gathered outside the police station as years of fear finally cracked open. The police chief was dragged out in cuffs. Judges named on the stream were suspended, investigations launched, files reopened, and victims poured forward with stories that matched every confession the sisters had recorded. Families torn apart by false charges were reunited, men wrongfully imprisoned were released, and the town that once lived in silence erupted into voices demanding justice. Danielle and Dominique stood before the community, bruised but unbroken, reminding everyone that power only survives when people are afraid to challenge it, and that corruption collapses the moment light hits it. What began as two women targeted in a bar became the downfall of a system built on cruelty and control, and as the sun rose over a town finally waking from fear, the sisters walked forward, not as victims, but as the spark that burned a monster to the ground.